Welcome back to M Hood Discovered. Yeah, you're right. Cheap chicken. Can you trust it? That's the question. We're going to talk about more than just that. So, this is a 10-pound bag of leg quarters, right? Another fine Marjac product. Excuse me, I was just like, is it Marjac or Marjac? I've been in Louisiana too long, maybe. I think it's Marjac. Well, this company is not a Louisiana company, so it probably isn't Jack. It's probably Jack. They're actually based out of Georgia. However, they process their chicken all over the South, including Mississippi. Now, do you remember back in 2019? I do. In 2019, many chicken processing plants across Mississippi were raided by ICE. I was just talking to someone not too long ago, and I mentioned ICE. I said, yeah, probably going to have an ICE raid around here eventually. And he looked at me and said, what's that? What's what? I said, what's ICE? What's an ICE raid? I said, you don't know what ICE is? No, I never heard of it. I said, you don't watch the news? I don't watch the news. I was just like, immigration, customs enforcement? Well, I've never heard of that. Oh, okay. So, Marjac, sorry, again, been in Louisiana too long. Shoot. Marjac was not one of the processing plants in Mississippi that got raided by ICE. I was just reading about this. Again, I've read much about this over the years, but I believe 700, I've seen two numbers, 600 and something people and 700 people were arrested. Illegal immigrants working at these chicken processing plants. However, over the years, not just in 2019, there's been many raids on chicken processing plants, and I would think if it's chicken processing plants, it's other processing plants where these companies are hiring illegal immigrants from all over, right? But yeah, other chicken processing plants have been embroiled in this kind of issue over the years. But 2019 saw a lot of massive raids all across Mississippi. This company has not experienced that kind of raid, but there's plenty of evidence, plenty of cases out there that show you they do hire, or in the past they have hired illegal immigrants, right? It seems like a pretty common thing with these chicken processing plants. And like I said, it's probably other processing plants too. There's a case where someone, it's not clear that he worked for Marjac, but he was charged with using a fake, a stolen identity, and he got a W-2 from that company, but he wasn't working for that company. But yeah, it sounds like he was. And then there were other cases there was another case I just read about, I think in 2022 or 2021, recently, where someone was pulled over. It was a Marjac employee transporting illegal immigrants to work at a processing facility for them in Alabama. Right? So, this video is not about illegal immigration. I'm just bringing that up, that these processing plants have questionable hiring procedures, right? And this chicken was really cheap. Now, normally, this 10-pound bag sells around here for just under $10, 9 something. With tax, it comes out to be about $10, right? I went in the store the other day, yesterday to be clear. It was $6.09. It was on sale. Yeah, so that's why I got it, right? But I'm going to be honest with you. This is not the best chicken. Economically, it's a good price, though. It is not the best. It is not the greatest. So I get these once in a while because it's cheap, right? It's economic. I get 10 pounds We'll see how many leg quarters are in there. And what I do is I put it up, right? I portion it out. Typically 2 to 3 leg quarters is what I'll cook at once. It's not always what I eat at once, but 2, right? 2 is like pretty standard. Sometimes, depending on what my meal is, maybe it's 1 leg quarter, but I may cook 2 and have the other one for leftovers later the next day, something like that. But what I do is cut the bag. Here we go. So we want to pour this chicken into the strainer. So we have the chicken and the juice separated. Sometimes I just reach in there and pull the chicken out 1 leg quarter at a time. Of course, not all this chicken is going to fit in a strainer, but if I'm careful, I can just pile it up. What I want to do is, separate the liquid from it and then rinse the chicken, right? And then we'll look at it. So there's other things to think about when we present the question, when we ask the question, is cheap chicken safe? Is cheap chicken a good idea? Is it going to be bad? What's going on here? Why would you be worried about cheap chicken? Of course, a lot of people, they're not worried about stuff. They're happy that the food they're buying is really cheap. They're not thinking about it, right? So here we go. I may get this done, and then we'll talk about things you should consider when you're buying cheap chicken. We're over here right next door to M. Hood's chicken processing plant, the double sink. I've got something going on right here in this pot, which is chicken bones. This is what my chicken processing plant looks like. It doubles as a double sink because it's a double sink. I'm just gonna separate, pull that up, rinse. You know what I'm doing. But you don't know what I'm doing there. I'm just making some chicken stock for my dogs. What I do is I let that come to a boil, then I put it on a simmer, let it simmer for a few hours, not long, just long enough to where it looks good and smells good. The house smells really good. It smells like I'm making a rotisserie chicken in here. And then I strain it, put it in a bottle, and I just put a little bit on their food each time I feed them. They love it. The only reason why I bring up the immigration issue is about who's dealing with your food, who's processing your food, right? So it's something to consider, but it's not the most egregious. It's not, when it comes to health, that is only a small thing to worry about. It is something though. Bad things can happen, like contamination and whatever, but it doesn't, just because there's illegal immigrants processing the food doesn't automatically mean that there's a high likelihood of something like that. But yeah, if you don't know who's processing your food, you don't. I remember back in 2019 when this happened, because I was living in Mississippi. You know what happened? People around me got happy. You know why they got happy? Because they could finally go get a job. That was the most important thing to them. And in a lot of places where all of a sudden a processing plant or some other kind of plant loses their workforce because they were all illegal, people around there were like, good, I can go get a job now. Because people needed jobs that were from there that, we're talking about Americans. They couldn't get a job because of the hiring practices. And then now they have a job. They were happy. Like, finally, I can go work at the chicken processing plant again. But so, why is this chicken so cheap? It's not just because of the illegal immigrant issue. That has a little bit to do with it. Yes, there are people out there, employers out there hiring illegal immigrants as a cheap labor force, but there are a lot of illegal immigrants who are making the same as their American counterpart. So it's a bit of a myth. It's 50-50, false and true, right? You can find both. You can find them working for less than they should and then about the same as their American counterpart or more. So, outside of that issue, what makes this chicken so cheap? It's how it's raised. This chicken is not like raised on organic feed, out running around having a great time in life, eating grass and everything. No, they're in warehouses. They're in warehouses or in little cages in warehouses or in a warehouse all together on a cement floor. There's where your problem is. There's where it gets really, really cheap, right? Because they're raised on really cheap food that has a lot of chemicals in it. Look at this. It's not as skinny. It's nice and fat. I've only got these half-gallon ones or quart. These are quarts. So with these bags, only one can fit in there. I do have. What is this? I got another one. This is. Oh, I grabbed the wrong one. Here's. I got a half-gallon. I could put more in there, but Tulsa's like, give me that one. She's right here. She's all excited. I got your chicken on the stove. This ain't your chicken yet. This is the freezer's chicken. So yeah, these chickens are raised like that in a big warehouse on cheap feed and likely to have like shots put into them, like growth hormones is a possibility and other things. They're not living their best lives, right? They may never see the light of day. There's a lot of things like that, raised like that in a warehouse. Pigs, turkeys, and chickens, right? Shoot. There's a lot of Thanksgiving turkeys. The only time they see the light of day is when they're being carted off to the slaughterhouse. And then they get put on a conveyor belt hung from their feet. Going through, and they get their, they die upside down. So it's about how they're raised and what they eat. So that stuff is in the meat, right? Chemicals. It could be bad. Also, if you're not careful about how you process it out at the house, it is a 10-pound bag. I would not suggest that you keep it in the refrigerator and just like cook a little bit one day, cook a little bit more the next day. I would suggest you do exactly what I'm doing. Unless you got a party and you're going to cook it all at once, right? You do this. You get it out the bag. You get the blood and stuff, the juice that's in the bag, drained off. You wash them with some cold water, and then you put them in some cellophane bags, and you freeze them. Now these were already partially frozen when I got them yesterday. One thing I'm happy about this time, I haven't talked about it because I haven't seen it, but I've been looking. There's no feathers left on. I've bought this cheap chicken before and there was like 1 or 2 feathers be about round down here somewhere. Not the whole feather, but it'd be like the last bit of it left. And I'm just like, yep, that's cheap chicken for you. Got a couple feathers. Really, I guess this is a price alert. People are like, why are you talking about how it could be bad but you bought it? Just because it's cheap. I'm not rich. What's the matter with you? Yeah, it's cheap. There are things to think about. I would not live off this. Like, I'm not going through several 100 pounds of this a month, but chicken is a staple of my diet. When I can, I get the better chicken, but it costs a lot, right? If it was available and it wasn't too expensive, but it usually is very expensive, I'd be buying nothing but kosher chicken if I could afford it, because that's the best chicken. The kosher chicken. The best beef I've ever had is kosher beef. Well, actually, I take that back. I've had a lot of good beef in my time, because I am from Texas, but had kosher beef as well, and I've had kosher beef in Texas, and that's pretty good stuff. I gotta admit it. Now, when it comes to eggs, I'm only buying the kosher eggs. You know, I'm not buying the eggs that were coming from chickens raised in these warehouses where these chickens were undoubtedly raised, just because I like those eggs. And when it's available, I'm getting eggs from people's backyards when they're willing to give me those eggs, or, you know, sometimes an honor box out in the country. I'm about done, and I didn't even count, but that's fine. Let's go do a count and let's get out of here. I'm not cooking in this video, except for dog soup. This dog stock. Yeah, you're right. And here we go. So this count's gonna be easy. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. 10 leg quarters for $6.09. That's not bad. At least there were no feathers on them this time. And you know what I gotta say about the taste? It doesn't taste horrible, but it's not the best chicken, but it'll get you through. And it's not a bad price right now. But yeah, there's things to think about. You should think about your food. Think about what you're eating. And you know what sucks? When you want to eat better, a lot of times it means spending more money. Why should it be that way? Why should people, when they're down on their luck, and they're not making a lot of money, or they just don't have a lot, why should they have to eat the worst shit, the most poisonous stuff? Why don't we just get rid of all the poison that's in this food? Why don't we just get rid of it? Shoot, a lot of countries have. Yeah, you're right. Thanks for watching, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, being a member of the channel. Yeah, you're right. And I'll tell you what, I'll see y'all next time.